James Truth Seeker. But Michael, do you want to take a washroom break or get a drink? It's been 3 hours.
I've got like maybe 15 more minutes before I have to disappear. So let me, if there's any more questions that I can.
Well, James Truth Seeker is the one who brought us all together because he gave a talk about from your video 10 years ago called Silent Revelation of Truth, and you know, he was the impetus. So James, would you like to speak?
Oh, hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So anyway, I just have just to answer Greer's quick question there. I would say her experience sounds legit and everything, but if she saw an apparition that suddenly turns into symbols, to me that would be a sign that something out there is using what we would call reality vision, and that's something that's actually talked quite good in my own material. But also wanted to point out that in really looking into the Meier case for quite some time, and also into other UFO cases and so on, I have actually met people, let's say 1 out of every so many people that actually have had, let's say, real experiences with so-called UFOs aside from the Meier case. But one thing that I have actually discovered, and I've discussed this with Wendell Stevens himself, and that is the Meier case seems to be the only UFO case that we know of where somebody's actually having contact with beings from quote unquote outside of this solar system. And the other UFO cases, believe it or not, they actually seem to originate from extraterrestrial beings, aside from, let's say, what was discussed earlier about US government contacts with so-called back-engineered UFOs and back-engineered gray androids and things like that. But these other UFO contacts, you know, for example, a very well-known case with Dorothy Isaac and so forth, only to discover after even talking with her that these extraterrestrial beings that she seems to be in contact with are actually, get this, from the Earth. Just like those so-called Apunians that Mimi talked about earlier, they're actually from the Earth. And so I've actually got a book from Wendell Stevens about the Apunians, the same book that Mimi is trying to retranslate and write about again. And so anyway, just a sec, somebody's messaging me. Okay, I can't really see the message right now. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of clear that up for a bit. So there seems to be there's a big difference there. So Meier is definitely most distinctly in contact with Plejaren beings from outside of the solar system. And so the one that Mimi's talking about with the Vitko Navi, also his name is also Vlado Kapitanovic. He actually specifically states later on in later books, apparently, that the beings he's in contact with are actually stationed inside mountains around in Peru, and who have actually been here on the Earth for generations. Like, in other words, they did not just come to the Earth. They've actually been here and living on the Earth actually for quite some time. And so from a Plejaren's perspective, that can easily be explained that the Plejarens would view such other entities as not necessarily being defined as extraterrestrial. Now, also in comments to the so-called ascension. Now, my understanding of the so-called ascension is that was actually a New Age term, first that came up from a Madame Blavatsky, and she used a religious terminology actually taken from the Christian religion to actually describe that. And so, but what it actually, I guess you could say, amounts to, ascension is just simply a change of consciousness, meaning it's a time when humanity chooses to think beyond its religious beliefs, moving from an age of belief into an age of reason. I seem to remember Michael Horn actually discussed that same thing at one time, I think in his movie, I believe it was, one of his movies. So when humanity moves from that age of belief, age of religion, into an age of reason, to the point where we don't need religion anymore to govern us, when we actually come into the consciousness and the thinking awareness that we can actually govern ourselves with proper social communication skills, and so forth, in order to eventually become a true humanity, if that makes any sense. And that's where the Plejarens have actually been for who knows how many hundreds of thousands of years. These other extraterrestrial races, even the ones that are here on Earth, are actually still more in line with that too. They're more in line with our level of evolution.
Right. Do you see that as what many people have referred to as like the level? Are we 1, 2, or 3 in our galactic citizenry as regard to how we are using like power and whatnot? And then when we become a level 1, we will be introduced into the Galactic Federation and whatnot.
Well, I know what you're referring to. So you're referring to if we become like from a type 0 to a type 1 civilization based
Correct.
on Kaku's concept or science. And of course, we all know. And he's actually, I really enjoy listening to him and everything. And this whole thing about Galactic Federation, believe it or not, from my understanding, what we have is there's a group of entities, okay? They're actually within our solar system and within our Earth. And Meier only just really briefly touches on these entities, and he actually calls them from Earth aliens because they live here on Earth, because they're not from beyond our solar system. And what I mean that is that these Earth aliens or these benefactors, where they actually live in these ships, big huge ships out in our solar system. So they're not really very far from us, and they, in a sense, they've always been here. And so I learned from Dorothy Isaac. It was also kind of touched on in Meier's contact report from 251st, and that was the whole idea that their ancient ancestors brought our ancient ancestors to the Earth, and at some point in our ancient past, we separated from them because of our hostilities, our brutal nature, our barbarianism. And so the ancient benefactors who were here, for the most part, were actually forced off the Earth, and the ones who remained on the Earth actually went into seclusion. Like they actually have bases inside mountains and so forth. And there's even other beings besides that actually ended up in bases inside Mount Shasta, and that's kind of another story. And a lot of people refer to the beings in Mount Shasta as being Lemurians, but actually that wasn't true. They were descendants from ancient Hyperborea, which goes all the way back to ancient Atlantis, if you're interested in that, which goes back to approximately 116.5 thousand years ago.
Yeah, I was hypnotized in December because I was curious about all these QHHTs and the stuff that I just, even for me, I was like, really? I don't know. There's some conflicting, but then I realized we can conflict. I was under hypnosis. I said that my soul group, or whatever you want to call it, my cluster, chose Earth, but it was Terra at the time, and they named it after me. That was my name. My original name was Terra, and that I'm ancient, and that I was orphaned and I was taken in, and that these two are actually the people who raised me after Lyra was wiped out. That I chose Earth to bring all the galactic citizenries from their one culture, one belief, one planet, that had been only experiencing that for infinity. We created 12 projects in our galaxy for beings to come from all these different planets to coexist. And we wanted to embrace our differences so we could expand our infinite experiences. And that I was only in Lemuria, and then I was down in what you would call Agartha, or inner Earth. I bypassed the whole Atlantean time. And then I came back this lifetime to wrap up the cycle. and it was called The 9 Truths and the One Possible Alternative. And again, to plug in the ascension word, it's just the evolution of our consciousness as a species to get out of 0 citizenship into 1, into the next phase, so that we can know our people consciously.
Okay, I just want to bring it back to our this is question and answer period for Michael. So,
Yeah.
Michael, do you want to respond at all?
Well, I know that there was a lot said there. I simply want to say regarding what James said, the paintings and drawings by whomever are not the same thing as real visions. These are our personal experiences. Human beings are inspired. As a matter of fact, Ptah, the alleged leader of the alleged Plejaren race, said to Billy once, "I don't know why the human beings of Earth always attribute everything to extraterrestrials when they are, endowed with significant genius and talents themselves." And this is more like a religious kind of a thinking, which is the core of this mission, is to try to get us out of beliefs and into truth and facts and reality. So whatever people's interests are, I'm not here at all to argue about personal experiences. I have my own. I'm a creative person. I paint, I draw, I sing. Okay, the purpose for my presentation today, just so I can clarify, is to bring to you as best I can the information about the Meier case with an emphasis on the purpose at this time being it's so important that we understand the real live challenges and threats to our world, which are, according to them, as they have portrayed it now for decades, going to increase significantly during these times and from here on, that we find practical, good, down-to-earth ways to protect ourselves, to nourish ourselves, to be healthily interdependent with others so we can cooperate. In that sense, it doesn't matter how many extraterrestrial races exist or don't. That puts things outside of ourselves and outside of our control. It simply happens, as has been the difficulty of that mission that Meier's involved in, that's gone on for over 13,000 years on this planet, for people to take back their personal responsibility, learn the laws of creation, the immutable laws of this universe, which accord with scientific principles. We don't know everything in science, but to move on, use logic, use reason, evidence, be practical, and have the rest of our right brain and creative talents. Those are ours. We don't have to give any ounce of credit to any extraterrestrials, living or not living, or anything else, or past lives. This is us, it's now, and we have the opportunity to take this material, if we choose to, and evaluate it based on the evidence. And there's enough anecdotal here. I'm one of over 120 eyewitnesses. I've been within 20 feet of a craft. Unimportant. What we do, how we think, how we feel and act now, and how we can utilize this along with anything else we choose to in life. That's what this is about. So if there is another question or something, I'm glad to try and do it, and then I'll jump off to what I have to do.
Yes, anyone else who hasn't been on yet? I want to say there's still 14 of us here. Anyone else?
Well, I heard you mention hologram, and I've heard many other people mention that name. What do you understand under a hologram?
Okay. In the terms that I'm using it to describe as best I can the way in which the spiritual teaching speaks about the eternal, immortal human spirit. They say it is a part piece. It is with all of the potential evolutionarily of this, what they call the creation, this universe, that they're saying in terms of evolution, the spiritual and consciousness evolution, the human beings, through countless incarnations, more and more refined and intelligent and all of this stuff, the spirit gains more and more and more knowledge. And the next phase out of this existence is in what they call the high council in the Andromeda galaxy, where the beings, the human beings, are semi-physical, semi-spiritual, if you will. And still this thing, this human spirit, is expanding in its knowledge, wisdom through evolution. And in saying that it is a small part piece containing all of the potential of the universe with which it will eventually remerge, we say, some of us say, it's like a hologram of the universe. The hologram being, you can take a piece of a hologram and you can get the whole thing from it, being really simplistic. I'm not speaking scientifically. So we are saying here, the human spirit that enlivens every person and every new personality into which the human spirit reincarnates, grows and expands in its wisdom and knowledge and experience, so that it can re-merge with the great source of all that exists, use any term you want, the creation, the great spirit, whatever you like. And thereby it also brings the richness and wisdom of all of these life experiences back into the creation, which itself is an evolving energy. We use that term. It births itself, and very similar to what we call a Big Bang. It expands, it contracts over a very long period of time. It slumbers and it births itself again, having been enriched with all of the knowledge and experience of its previous creations, especially those that were inspirited as human beings, which have different destinies. We are never animals, contrary to Buddhism. We're never grapefruits or skunks or anything. We start in the most primitive early form of a human life. The spirit is very young, new, undeveloped, and unknowing. And through many, 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 many incarnations over many millions and millions of years and more, we move from personality to personality. And while we might have some little glitches along the way, we are gaining in our evolutionary knowledge and wisdom. And we come for the next ride, the next personality, to solve the next problems, to have the next experiences and discoveries. And all of this ultimately contributes to this universal energy, call it what you will, which is neutral. It does not intercede in our lives. It doesn't bestow upon us or punish us, because everything accords with already established, immutable universal laws. When we, the individual humans, study and learn, and through trial and error, making mistakes and having epiphanies, when we learn how to live in harmony with these immutable laws, we experience what we call miracles, good fortune, all the rest. It's simply that we've moved into that next level that bestows upon us, from our accomplishing it, certain knowledge and awareness and certain other challenges. And it will be so throughout any given life and into the next and the next and the next. And we don't have karma. We don't bring into the next life a burden, punishment from what we did in the previous, because everything in any given life, we fulfill the positive and the negative. Both are necessary for evolution. We can't stagnate positive, we can't stagnate negative. So we have certain things, but we are not blamed for them. We're not held back because in a life we made this mistake or that, and it seems unfair to some people, so they have to have punishment and purgatory. We come in clean, and then it's up to us how we're educated, what we make of it. We are ultimately responsible in each life. So that little part piece, that little hologram, is absorbing all that's happening in this material and less than material life in each incarnation. That's my understanding.
Well, did Billy Meier ever mention a hologram?
You know, I actually don't think I've seen them use that word. They've described so the thing that comes, and many people have fallen to saying, well, that's like a hologram. It's the part piece of the whole thing that can reveal the whole thing. Simple sense. We're not trying to get stuck on that term. We're using something as close to understandable for people to say, well, what is this human spirit? And the human spirit has all this potential energy. It is the battery for our life. When that spirit leaves the body, we're done. It doesn't come back ever. We can have what are called near-death experiences, but we're never dead in those experiences. We're oxygen deprived. We can have organs fail to a certain point or be non-detectable. But if somebody goes, whoa, what was that? They're back, they weren't dead. So there's just a lot of stuff. I'm by necessity simplifying, trying to encapsulate some ideas about this for
Well,
what they're worth to people.
but you actually don't know what a hologram is.
I am, again, Rolf,
Okay.
you want to put, you can put,
I just make it short.
well, wait, before you do it, try to understand that my purpose here today has been and is to try to bring forward some of the understanding. It's like, I understand it in true holograms, you've got all this stuff with interference patterns and three-dimensional this and that. It's the closest symbolic thing that many of us have come up with. If you have a better terminology for it, I mean, the spirit is misunderstood in many ways. It's called the soul, it's called this, it's called that. So we tried to go into a more neutral description of something that has all of the properties of the original thing and how they can be then revealed. But I have to run that.
No, it's important that I excuse me, tell you what a hologram is because I made some. There are two types of holograms.
I have to beg my leave, and I'm not trying to be rude because
A hologram is an illusion, right? You make it visible with a laser light. Yes, a projected hologram. You can take the glass plate, you break it in pieces, and each piece, if you hit it with a laser, will represent the picture you've taken.
Right.
It's a photographic process. What has that got to do with any spirituality? It's an illusion.
Work with me here, will you? I mean,
cannot see a hologram without a light.
Okay, without the light. So the original light is the creational energy, okay? If you want to be a nitpicker, then come up with a better term that will be accessible enough.
It's up to you.
No, it isn't up to me. Because I'm content to use the term the human spirit. Does that translate for you? A lot of people go, well, what the heck is that? Is that the soul?
But other people said, well, there is another universe. It's a hologram. The universe is like a hologram.
Okay.
Without the laser light, you have a chart of glass. That's all you have. And the moment you shoot a laser at it, you get a phantom image that is not real.
It has the properties of the original that it is generated from.
But only on the projection hologram, not on the reflecting hologram.
So think about it
on your credit card.
Look, so think about it this way. Each human being, we don't exist except for the overall creational energy. In that sense, we are individuated projections of an energy. Okay, do it any way you want. Call it anything you want.
In other words, you guys knew nothing about you were talking about until about 1967, 68, when the laser was invented and the first hologram was made.
Rolf, try to pay attention here.
Well, use another term. Don't
Billy Meier did not use. Can you pay attention for one brief second before I have to go?
Okay.
Billy Meier did not use the term hologram. He speaks of the human spirit. He speaks of what it is in description. Okay, you don't like that, but don't, because you haven't understood.
Don't equate it to a hologram.
Fine. There are people that understand better.
No, they don't.
Okay, fine.
Illusion.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you for the correction. For those that know what the human spirit is, you don't need an explanation. For those that don't know, we can either try to go through all of that we can describe it by, or we can say, you may think about it this way if you choose. It's a part piece of the overall that has all the potential properties of the overall. I might want to say, gee, what do we have a word in English for that? You have a good time with that. I'd like to thank you, Brian.
You didn't know about that 50 years ago.
Oh, God.
I guess you have to go now, Michael.
I'd like to say one last thing, pardon me, if I may, Brian.
Yeah, we still want to thank you before you go. We still have to say thank you for your talk before you go. But
It's my pleasure. Here's one of the reasons why I detest ufology. It has created belief systems. It's polarized people. It's given them more imaginary stuff than the fairy tales of history, a lot of which have elements of ufology in it. So people come away after an hour-and-a-half presentation to find something to argue about, to make it wrong, rather than to do what's asked of them, which they are not obligated to do. Think about the evidence, to look into the teaching, and to see what this is about. If you want to tell me that it's a wrong dimensional hologram or something, if you want to tell me this is really tomato, tomato, it's all the same, it's ascension, and so it's fine, you can have that. But, and I'm not trying to come here to argue with people. If you want to tell me about extraterrestrials after this presentation, then I'm going to say to you respectfully, you so far learned nothing from this presentation because you have no evidence, you have no proof. Now, that isn't to say, did this man in 1960 have these meetings? I'm open to it. I want to see evidence. I'll be glad to say, hey, this is really cool. This guy must have been meeting with these people and look at this information. But all the rest of this about ETs and this and that, folks, if you don't get now that it's a waste of time and that your life is more threatened by a disease that will be with us for the rest of our time on Earth, then your priorities, in my opinion, are skewed. I come to this community to say these things, and you don't have to accept them. That's simply my perspective, and I'm not here to argue your realities with you or your beliefs. That's what I came. Take it, do with it what you want, and I'll be glad if you want to do another meeting and you've got questions, and you've got challenges, and you've got stuff that you can put out here and say, well, this shows that that's wrong and blah, blah. I'm up for it, but I'm not here to argue semantics. Really.
Yeah, we'd love to do another meeting. Like Mimi and I have invited you for another fact. This has been probably one of the most spirited meetings ever. We'll get you 10,000 hits for sure. This has been a great talk, Michael. I mean, I love
it, and I'm grateful that people, anybody that's hung out this long, that even that disagree or don't like any of this stuff, you've been so courteous and you've been interested. I'm for it. I'm just a person. I've come away after 42 years with my perspectives on it, and I don't tell you it's all true. I just do tell you anybody can now prove that our lives are at risk on this planet, and there's nobody coming to save us. There's no God, saints, saviors, angels. There's no ETs. Nobody's coming to save us. We've been given this, so we will take responsibility for our lives and save ourselves in harmony, working with each other, disagreements and all. So I thank you. I'm going to disappear. I'm kind of a little late for my next thing, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
Yeah, and your website is called theyfly.com. Thank you kindly, Michael, for your talk. Appreciate it.
And
I'll give you applause here.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Anybody that wants a free copy of Silent Revolution of Truth, get me an email. Just mention this so I know who you are, and I will send you the link to download it for free. I think arguably it's the best documentary.
Well, your email is below this video, right? We can put your email publicly, so it's below this video.
Yes, please. Anybody, anytime that hears this, I will be glad. No strings attached. I don't sell your information. I don't spam you. I don't keep your email address. I will send you for free that film just so you have that record from 13 years ago, what we put out, okay? And thank you very much, everybody. Thanks so much.
Okay, great, Michael. Thanks for coming. We'll carry on. Yeah, so this has been about 3 hours and 10 minutes. So our record is 8 hours. I've got lots of time here. I ate, so I will just carry on with questions and discussion. I had a few questions to ask him actually, but they had to go.
Well, I just wish he told us what to do about it. Never mind that Meier already predicted this. What is the point? Right?
I think the point is to not live in fear, because fear damages your immune system. We've already discussed the science behind the law of attraction and energy. Thoughts are things. So you can definitely fear yourself into a COVID-related death if you so desire, but that doesn't mean the rest of the world is in peril. This earth has always had nasty critters coming at it. This one is no different, and it's definitely not the worst.
Actually, I don't think it's an issue of fear, though. I think it's an issue of taking the right steps in order to eliminate the COVID as opposed to what's actually going on in the world. For example, proper masks as opposed to all this vaccination. Do you agree?
No,
Why is that?
I will never get the vaccination for one. Okay, so I drove for Lyft for a little bit, and many of my passengers worked at the hospitals, and they were the ones that had the masks hanging around their neck. They were not taking it serious. They said how many times there was disinformation on the airwaves, that they had all sorts of supplies and empty beds, and they didn't know where the photographs that were flooding the media were coming from because it was nonsense. So but I also know people who have got it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I think it was engineered. I think it attacks certain individuals, and the rest of us can fear it into our life, but it is not a global threat. It is not the Spanish flu.
No, it's not a global threat right now, but the virus is mutating into new variants that could become a global threat in the future.
There's also the Rothschilds had a patent for the COVID vaccine in 2016 in the Library of Congress. The Rothschilds had a patent to this COVID in 2016.
I mean, I think COVID is bullshit. I think it's a new world order made up. But yeah, I mean, people have said, I'm going to leave this meeting if he's talking about COVID, you talk about Trump next. People have threatened to leave this meeting, so I'm not too interested. I can spend 6.5 minutes on COVID, but I'm about done with COVID. But whatever you guys want to talk about, this has been a great meeting. Really? We're going to get 10,000 hits.
Okay, so I've had experiences throughout my life. My children have had experiences. We've been at the same place, experiencing and witnessing each other's experience, some crazy stuff. But they were like every, 3 or 4 years, very spread out. And this year, it's like every 3 or 4 weeks since September, just bam, bam, bam. My psychic, or whatever you want to call it, abilities, clairaudience, visuals, information coming through. A week and a half ago, I woke up chanting a saying, and I phonetically put it in Google Translate, and it said Arabic detected, and I was telling someone, right, I see. And then exactly a week later, I cognitively or clairaudiently heard a phrase, and I woke straight up, phonetically put it into the Google Translate again, and it once again said Arabic detected, and it said, I am a knight. But it wasn't a K-N-I-G-H-T. We're talking Google Translate, so it's loosely translated. But I'm communicating with someone in an ancient dialect that is rooted to Arabic. You can't make that crap up. That is happening. That's proof. That's proof I actually asked for to make sure I wasn't a lunatic, which, both could be happening. I could be crazy, but I'm still experiencing this stuff. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, totally. Hi, Greer. Anyway, I thought this was a very interesting whole talk. Greer, I'm a contactee and I guess experiencer. And in my research with the several people now who I've been able to reach out to and study the stuff with, yeah, you're always going to have information. It's like, yeah, it's your markers of confirmation, getting information that you don't have any knowledge about, whether it's some ancient language. Sometimes the beings are saying things about science to me or in my contact events, and I have no knowledge about this stuff, and it comes out of hypnotic regressions. And then all of a sudden I have to look up the word protoplasm, or you have to look up some physics term, and you don't know these words, you've never heard them yourselves, and all of a sudden you have to research this stuff.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, very weird that they'll use religious language. They'll use religious language or religious terms or ancient words or ancient language. Yeah, it's such a strange. Someone was saying that they didn't believe some UFO contactee because he could transcribe things into zeros and ones. Why would the aliens give you zeros and ones? And what's clear to me is the aliens seem to know so much